That's not a comic book. Now that's a comic book.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Comic Reviews. I'm Sid Part 2, and I am sorry these videos are getting progressively later. They're taking longer to shoot, and as I'm getting more books, they're taking longer to get ready for. I read all the comics right when I get home from the comic shop, and I sit down and go right at it. So, the good news is you're getting more material, so hopefully I'm picking up some stuff that you guys are interested in, and of course, if you pick up comics and there's something that you get that you'd like to hear my thoughts on, leave it in the comments below. If there's a particular trade or graphic novel that you love and would like to hear me talk about, leave it in the comments below. Leave it in the comments below, and I'll do my best to pick it up. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go in reverse order, talking about what I read last to first. And I love this. The Four Doctors, number one of 5. This is brilliant because it's like, it starts off kind of rocky, I'm gonna admit. There's some stuff at the beginning that I still do like, but it's a little at the beginning. But as soon as it becomes so self-aware, it gets amazing. The 12th Doctor, like the 11th and 10th Doctor are fighting, and the 12th Doctor like runs into this room that they're all in, or this cafe, whatever, and has honestly one of the greatest lines ever. So I'm just gonna read it, and I'm not gonna do a Peter Capaldi impression to the best of my ability. "Shut up, I worked out what you'd been up to while I was asleep, young lady. I just tried to talk sense into these two earlier doctors, if that's who they are. I'm pretty sure I vaguely recognize them, but they wouldn't listen. So now, alright, okay. We're all going to have some sort of multi-doctor event, whether you like it or not." And then they go on fighting, bickering, and bickering. And then all of a sudden Clara comes in and it's like, "Stop it! Step away from the multi-doctor event! This is exactly what I didn't want!" Oh my god, it reminds me so much of the beginning of Night of the Doctor, the Paul McGann little short that they did before the 50th anniversary, where he like shows up and he's like, "I'm a doctor, probably not the one you were thinking of." Because, like, you watch that for the first time and you expect it to be Tennant or Smith coming in to do something, and then it turns out to be Paul McGann, and you're like, holy fuck balls. And that should be your exact reaction, everyone. If it's not, there's something wrong with you. You obviously didn't get the true purpose of the scene. And so there's a lot of that going on in here. Like I said, it starts off a little bit on the rocky side. We do get some more Doctor stuff, which is kind of cool to see. It's not that I don't like the War Doctor stuff. It's just not super interesting, and then it seems to get, like, really, really complicated as they set up the contrivance of what's going on to get them all together. There seems to be a reference to handles. The 10th Doctor has a Cyberman head, and he promises to dispose of it safely, and the 11th Doctor's farting around the same town at the same time, and so it seems like they might be setting up the origin of handles. The story that we've been waiting for. So, like, it's just a lot of fun, though. Once you get... As soon as all three of them are on page at the same time, that's when it gets really interesting. Everything else up to that is kind of just okay, and it's kind of fun to see the comic book companions hanging out with Clara. There's one line in this that it just didn't make much sense to me. It doesn't help that Gabby, who is the 10th Doctor's companion, and Clara seem to kind of be drawn... They're not the same, they have a different hairstyle, so it's somewhat easy to tell them apart, but they do look really similar. And so the companions are a little skeptical of Clara, which, I mean, I guess that makes sense. But after she's like after they've all passed each other's tests, I guess, Gabby has this line, and I don't know what, it seems so weird. It seems like she's responding to something that hasn't been said. She says, "She's telling the truth, just listen to her, both of you. She says that you don't get all what's her problem, you get into it, start taking it apart. We're doctor people, ladies." I just don't know what that's in response to, and it's like, I read that like 3 or 4 times, and I still don't get it. But yeah, so like Clara's getting these two other companions together because she has a picture of the 3 doctors meeting. She's like, no, this cannot happen. There's universe-ending stuff that will go on if it happens, blah, blah, blah. And that's all fine, I guess. It's just, it's over halfway into this book. Yeah, it's halfway into this book before we get both doctors, interacting. Before we get more than one doctor interacting with them. You know what I mean. It's confusing. But as soon as that happens, it's right about at the halfway point. But as soon as that happens, it's so much fun. And what's great about that is it happens, and then it's just dialogue. It's all just dialogue. Like, I remember when I was first getting Bill into Doctor Who, like, he and I would have these really long conversations and stuff over the phone. And at one point I, like, just passingly mentioned that there were, stories where the Doctor meets his past self and they interact and everything. And he's like, oh my god, what's it like when they interact? And I'm like, oh, they don't get along at all. And I remember his reaction was so genuine. He was like, oh, that's perfect. And I love that about the Doctor, is every time he meets himself, they just never, it's never cool. They just always hate each other. That's perfect because, I mean, when you think about that idea of meeting yourself in the past, there's certainly some stuff where you might think, oh, I'd tell myself not to do this and not to do that. But then you think about it, if someone you didn't really know was just telling you how to act, that'd be fucking annoying. You'd be like, well, fuck you. I ain't gonna put up with your shit. So, that's really genuine. It's really fun to see doctors interact with each other on multiple levels. So, I don't know, this is a lot of fun once it gets going, but it takes half an issue before it gets going. One of the things I liked about the beginning of the book, the scene with the War Doctor, is, I don't remember where I heard it, but someone did make a really good point about the 50th anniversary that, you hear all this talk throughout the new version of Doctor Who about the Time War and what it was, and it's always very vague. And then we finally get our first real glimpse of the Time War in the 50th anniversary, and I mean, it's kind of like Star Wars but with Daleks, right? It really is futuristic war that we've seen before, where you got lasers flying and stuff, and that's fine. There was nothing wrong with it, especially since it's so short and it's just like a final battle. So I don't particularly mind that. But when you hear something called a time war and you hear all this talk about it, you do kind of expect something much stranger, and that's what we get here with the War Doctor. We get kind of like a glimpse of what other battles in the Time War were really like. So, this is narration from the War Doctor, and says, and it's put over a Dalek ship like crashing, and so he says, "That's it, lads. They've hit a chronic tripwire. The Daleks in there are experiencing something they'll find most unpleasant: accelerated evolution. Send in your war bands if you'd like, but let me assure you, all they'll find is dust." And then like this, kind of marker box, whatever you call it, when it says the location and the time, blah, 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 says, Planet Marinus, year A10% ? Of the last Great Time War. So it's just this really vague sense of what's going on with time, and the War Doctor's having this conversation with these aliens that have helped him fight against the Daleks, that have been like a resistance against the Daleks on this planet. And they say, "We feel the Time War has benefited us. The paradox and shifts in causation have changed us, made us better, Doctor. If the Time Lords win this war, will they revert everything to how it was? Will they take all this away from their loyal allies?" And that's really interesting. So that's really much more what you think of when you hear Time War. Some kind of like, constantly, one sec. I have just what I need to talk about. Where's it at? There we go. when you hear Time War, you really think Time Splitters. I love this game, by the way, and I mean, it's not the strongest story in the world, but it had a really unique premise of some aliens were attacking Earth, but to do so, they were going back in time and changing history to be able to make Earth weak by the time they invaded in, like, the far future. And so the humans had to use time travel to go back and stop them that way. So that's kind of what you think of, is you think of Daleks invading, Gallifrey when the Time Lords were, amoebas or whatever. So I think that's really interesting stuff, and that's kind of what we get at the beginning of this. It's still really vague. We don't know all the circumstances of the battle, but now we get a better sense of what the day-to-day of the war was actually like. So I really like that. And this is overall a really strong start. It stumbles a little right out the gate, but it is really just setting everything up, and getting ready for everything to get going. And once you get them on page together, on screen, whatever, once they're together, the Doctors immediately steal the show and just run with it, and that's perfect. And it's so much fun because of how self-aware it is. And so it'll be fun to see these three Doctors interact with the fourth Doctor, who, I mean, I'm assuming is the War Doctor, and I gotta be honest, I'm a little disappointed by that. Don't get me wrong, I've definitely wanted more stuff with the War Doctor, but we just had a crossover with him and the other two Doctors in this team up. So it's certainly fun to see the 12th Doctor interact with the 10th and 11th, and to the 10th and 11th, since neither of them remember the interaction, it seems, or since I guess the 11th hasn't experienced it yet, and the 10th doesn't remember it. They don't, to them it's like meeting for the first time again, which is cool. But I don't know, it would have been fun to see, Eccleston, or even just pull one of the really old Doctors, or I've been dying for some 8th Doctor stuff. I know that Eccleston had a series, and I'll probably pick that up in trade since it was just a mini-series, and one of the covers, back here really makes me want to do it, because it's got Captain Jack on it. I'll get that close to the camera just for you. I don't know how much good it's going to do. But yeah, that really does make me want to go get that. So I was kind of hoping for a different Doctor, because they were really vague about who it's going to be. But, I mean, to be fair, it could still change. But when you see the War Doctor in the beginning of the book, you're assuming that he's going to have something to do with the story, especially when he's on the same planet that the rest of the story is kind of building around right now. But overall, really enjoyable read. Stumble out the gate a little bit, not gonna lie, but just get over that hurdle, and it's so much fun. Even if you haven't been reading the comics, they do the little Marvel catch-up page to tell you who's who in Doctor Who, and so it's a really great book. You can. As long as you're aware of Doctor Who and who these characters are, I think you can pick this up without a problem, even if you haven't been reading the comics. So let's go ahead and move on. I'm going to pick up one more issue of this. And that's going to be... And if that one doesn't really get me, that's the end of this on this show. I'm not loving this right now. It's really just way too weird. And not like the good, fun kind of weird, like the, okay, I get what you're going for. You're trying to set up this mystery and intrigue, but there isn't enough for me to be invested in yet. We start off this book with finding out that John Jones is secretly a weapon, has been lying to the people of Earth for generations now. Or not generations, for years now. So I'm immediately questioning his character. And then in the second issue, he commits suicide. So I'm like, okay, so we're getting a new Martian Manhunter? But now we're getting this, like, weird reveal at the end with this FBI agent and this Mr. Biscuit's character. And he has this... spoilers, because this is the last line in the book. Spoilers. Don't be the dumb cookie now. I'd have thought that was obvious. I'm John Jones, the Martian Manhunter, and so are you. And he says that to this FBI agent. And there's this, like, it's interesting, it's compelling, and the tease on that page says, next issue, what? So, like, that's fine. I don't mind building a mystery, but it feels like I'm watching, Lost. So yeah, I feel like I'm watching an episode of Lost when I read this, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I like mystery in my comics. I love, like, a good mystery that I can sink my teeth into and try to figure out. But the point of shows like Lost, and there are other things that have done that, Flashpoint, and those kind of, like, weird sci-fi things. Under the Dome, I think, is kind of the same way. The point behind that is you couldn't possibly figure it out. The setup is entirely fanciful. There's no real reason to it. It's whatever the writer decided it was, and it can be logical in and of itself, in and of its own rules, but you can't call it, is kind of the appeal, and so the fun is in speculation and stuff, and I can enjoy that in some things, but it's just not working for me here. That's not really my cup of tea, I guess. If you're into that thing, I guess you might enjoy this, but if you also have to kind of like Martian Manhunter, but at the same time you can't, I don't think that works, because if you like Martian Manhunter, you probably won't like this, because it's kind of doing the Azzarello thing and stomping all over his continuity to do what the writer wants, and I can appreciate that when it's good. If it works, new universe, you're allowed to do whatever you want with it, but unless you just love the concept of digging into a mystery so big and so completely unknowable that you're never going to get to solve it, but just the thrill of experiencing with it and wondering what's going on is your thing, then you're not going to love this. If you really love Martian Manhunter and all his forms and incarnations, you might like this. But if you love his past continuity and everything, that's really going to bother you. So I just don't quite know who this book is for, because I don't feel like anyone picks up a Martian Manhunter book unless they really like Martian Manhunter, or if they want to get into his character. One sec, sorry. I need my phone to time the camera, and it's all crazy bullshit, and I'm getting a new camera soon, I promise. So, like, there's stuff in here that I can see people enjoying, but at the same time, it's too all over the place for me. So the next issue is titled or teased with "What?" and it seems to be setting up this idea that Martian Manhunter is going to come back together after committing suicide in the issue before, and it's all just this. I don't want to use the term clusterfuck, but I don't know what else to call it, because there's so many things going on at the same time, and normally I can enjoy that kind of thing, but you have to start out slower than this and just give me time to enjoy something before you switch it up on me. So, I don't know, I'm gonna give one more issue a shot, and if I like that better than this, I'll go for it, but for right now, I gotta admit, I'm very disappointed in this so far. I thought it was really cool that Martian Manhunter was getting his own series again, and I hope it does well, but it's not working for me, so I'm one issue away from saying nope. Amazing Spider-Man Renew Your Vows, number 4. That's the number that begins with the 4. So this I actually really liked a lot more than the last issue, as a matter of fact. Last issue I kind of complained about how the thing I don't like about what they revealed with Regent wanting Spider-Man's powers because they were somehow special or unique. I initially was like, oh, that sucks. The idea that, the hero has to be, the one or the super special or whatever, to quote the Lego movie. They handle that here and they resolve it in a really interesting way. It's not that Peter Parker is some kind of chosen or perfect or it couldn't be done without him or anything. it's that Peter Parker has the spider powers, and the power Regent needs is spider sense to be able to defeat Doom. So that I really enjoyed. It's not anything particularly special about Peter or Spider-Man. It's just he needs that particular power among everything else. So I really enjoyed that part of it. There's some other interesting stuff in here. I really like the way they're writing Annie Mae Parker. Like, she has this great line at the beginning. My name's Annie Mae Parker. I'm the daughter of Spider-Man. But for the first few years of my life, I thought my middle name was Annie No. Because she's grown up with superpowers her whole life, and she's constantly just using them the way a kid would, and her parents are just constantly screaming Annie No at her. But what I like about it is she's always wanted to help people. She very much has that not responsibility thing with Peter Parker, just that Superman-like urge to naturally help people just because it's the right thing to do. And so the idea of staying, silent or standing on the sidelines is really good. There's a little bit of like a really Peter, really thing in here with Sandman. So basically the premise is Regent has taken every single person that has superpowers and made them an outlaw, and he'll take all their powers as quickly as he can get them. And so when Peter sees Sandman, he's like, oh, you're a member of the Secret Six with working for Regent, and Sandman makes the point. It's like, no, I'm not with these jerks, I'm with S.H.I.E.L.D. We're here to get all of you to safety. We don't have time for this now. Move it before... You're one of Regent's Secret Six, probably took Doc Ock's spot. I got powers, you idiot. Why on earth would I be with Regent? Spider-Man's supposed to be taking this shit more seriously now. And it's a little annoying that he has to make a mistake to drive the story forward. That's one of the things that I've noticed about a lot of Spider-Man is everything, or not everything, but a lot of Spider-Man's stories are dependent on him screwing up. Not the villain being successful, or not the villain being particularly successful or adept. It's more dependent on Peter Parker making mistakes. And I'm okay with that, with the hero making mistakes from time to time, but it happens a lot with Spider-Man. Like, a lot. And so maybe, this guy, it gets to that point where you just can make the argument, well, shit, if you weren't out being a superhero, we wouldn't have these problems in the first place. So just quit, and everything will be fine. So, I mean, I don't know. I find that to be a flaw in the writing with Spider-Man, but it's consistent, if nothing else. So, this I really did like, though. It's great character stuff, with Annie Mae Parker, wanting to use her powers and wanting to help people. You get that Incredibles feel from it. Just not wanting to be ashamed. And also you find out that Peter Parker has accidentally made the thing that could actually end up destroying Regent, which I really like. The inhibitor chips that he's made for himself and his daughter to hide their powers from Regent's sensors could actually be used to defeat Regent, which is really clever writing. And so I thought that was pretty neat too. I'm curious how many more issues this has left, but so far it's a really fun read. Can't be more than 2 issues, right? Maybe. We'll see. It's definitely interesting though. Really, really good book so far. I've really been enjoying it. I don't have a ton to say. It's interesting. It's setting stuff up well, but I'm kind of torn on some other things about it, and it has that MacGuffin Spider-Man thing that you often deal with of, he has to screw up in some way in order to learn a lesson, blah blah blah, and that gets old really quickly for me. But good stuff nonetheless. If you want to hear more of my thoughts on the Spider-Man, you can go watch this week's episode of Geeky Gentleman. I'll put the link right up here in this area for you to click on, and of course down in the description after all the timestamps. Sorry, camera made noise, so I assumed something went wrong. Yeah, I'll put the link in the description under all the timestamps so you guys can check it out at your leisure. Let's go ahead and continue on. So I was in love with this book the last time I talked about it, and this week it's just okay. It's still good. It's fun character stuff for Wonder Woman, but they kind of did something that I'm not happy about. One of the things I was really loving about the book is every issue was, 2 stories or something. And this is, I believe, their first issue where they did a full story. And it seems to be in the New 52 canon because they have a lot of allusions to the Superman relationship. So you have to assume it's in New 52, but what's weird about it is she's wearing the old 52 costume, so it's kind of okay. I don't know what's going on. But beyond that, the other thing that kind of tripped me up about it is you can see a very, sketchy, kind of flat, matte cartoony style drawing, and then you go ahead a little bit, and the art style changes completely. And I understand wanting to have a book come out on time and an artist not being able to deliver on time. That I get that. It happens. But then it happens again. 3 artists in one issue through one story gets really distracting really quickly. And it's not like they're drawing in a similar style. It's miles apart. Like, even the character design kind of changes. Even the costume, I think, changes a little bit. Now, the costume doesn't quite change, but it does. Like, the physical features do change quite a bit. Like, the cleavage on both Wonder Woman and Superwoman changes, and there's just a lot about, like, the skin tone changes drastically from artist to artist. So it's really weird to read through a story like that, especially when it's one continuous story. To be fair, maybe they just had a really good script and they wanted to really take their time with it, but they have other artists that they need to be able to keep on the book, so maybe that's why they did it that way. I don't know. I thought it was a really weird decision to do that. Nonetheless, it is a good story. It has some cool scenes in it. It's just Wonder Woman fighting Superwoman, who is, I believe, Wonder Woman from Parallel Universe. I can never remember. You can't keep all this shit straight. It's comic books. But, like, they have some cool fight scenes and stuff. And there's this one moment I really do love where it's all about who's more powerful because, Wonder Woman's all about, being nurturing and helpful and being a force for good, and Superwoman's all just about power and strength and nothing else. And so there's this moment where Superwoman gets a hold of the magic lasso and ties it around Wonder Woman. She says, and I proved I was the greatest... Oh, wait, and she says, and now here you are my prisoner. Bound by your own lasso, you have to tell the truth now, so who's the best of us? Say it's me. Agree with me. And Wonder Woman says, no, I am. And then she beats the shit out of Superwoman and ends up taking her to jail. And throughout, we have these 3 girls, and Wonder Woman poses for a selfie with them at the end of the book. We have these 3 girls who are runners training, and Wonder Woman's making the point about as long as you work hard, you can be the best. It's always possible to become the best. And you have this girl who's the best of the runners saying, oh, Wonder Woman's my idol. And that's really nice and really fun stuff. I really question some of the creative decisions. I think I would like this story more than I do if it hadn't done that shift, because it's distracting away from what else is going on in the book, and that's problematic. So, overall, I think it's good. I think it's a fun read, but this is probably the issue I've enjoyed the least so far, and I just added it to the whole list. I hate it when that happens, but, I mean, a year on, I really hope that this isn't the new format for them. Issue number 13, that really could mean that they're going to do, full stories in the book, and, like, I can support that, but I was really in love with the to storybook format. That was really cool. But overall, I still think it's fun. I still think it's enjoyable. It's just this is the least I've enjoyed this book so far. So take that how you will. And then we move on to Wonder Woman number 43. Here's a bad decision, DC. Have both your Wonder Woman books come out in the same week. Do one at the beginning of the month, one at the end, or one every other week. Just something like that, because then you get your character dispersed more throughout the month. I think that's smarter business making, but whatever. I don't know. Maybe the Sensation comic really just is an attempt to make Wonder Woman fans who don't like the New 52 thing, just give them something else to buy those weeks. One sec, be right back. Yeah, maybe that's the strategy. I don't know. I think that's kind of silly. I'd prefer to read Wonder Woman, more than once a month, but whatever. So this picks up right where the last issue left off. Donna Troy has escaped from Olympus now with the help of Strife. Strife is written a little bit better, but Wonder Woman does have a good line to her. Strife says that, maybe, cold-blooded murder is just a cold-blooded murder in reference to Donna Troy. And Wonder Woman says, I don't believe that any more than I believe in your self-proclaimed disinterest. Fortunately for Donna, forgiveness isn't about changing who you are, it's about finding peace through accepting it. It's learning to love your whole self, the good and the bad, and the strife. And so I like that. There's that, we're getting a little bit back to that quickness, that wit that some of the writing had, particularly with Strife in Azarella's run. So Wonder Woman getting to quip back at Strife, with that kind of venomous tongue is good. Ultimately, though, this issue is just kind of more the story progressing. There's one moment in it I really don't like. We have Milan, not the Russian comic book geek, but the character Milan, introduced in Azarella's run, who has the ability to see anyone anywhere through bugs, which is creepy and it's really painful for him, so he always keeps a blindfold on so he can never see. And so Wonder Woman goes to him to help her find Donna Troy, who's escaped and is wondering about London. And he's like, no, I can't use the site, it's too painful. And she goes, okay, I'll find another way, and goes to leave. He says, Diana, nice sister, wait. Seeing hurts, seeing everything is hell ride, but I will take a hell ride for nice sister. I will help if I can. And then he does it. It's just way too quick of a turnaround. I know she's helped him in the book before and stuff, but I don't know. This guy had to be coerced into doing it by Orion at one point, so it's kind of hard for me to buy that. But, when it's Wonder Woman, when she asks you to do something that's nice about it, you're usually gonna do it. So anyway, Donna Troy visits the Fates because she wants them to cut her thread, which really interesting stuff's being done with Donna Troy, which I'm happy for because that character's had a what the fuck kind of history. So she wants the Fates to cut her thread because she feels like she's a monster, that she was even though she was brainwashed, she still feels terrible for what she did. And the Fates reveal they don't have her thread. It doesn't exist. They've weaved every single thread for every single mortal life, at least on Earth, but not hers. So that's this really freaky revelation, which means that you can't possibly die a normal death, that someone else is controlling her fate. And that I like. We're getting back into that Greek myth kind of thing, and that's a really fascinating idea, yet we're modernizing it at the same time. So I really, really love that. So Donna Troy leaves, she's frustrated that she's being used as somebody's tool, and then we see a shadowy figure enter the Hall of the Fates. And the Fates try to tell Wonder Woman, who shows up as the last of them is dying, the death of fate, an end in time, all God's falls victims to this crime, To start again, rebirth we see, a girl of clay your answers be, and then she dies before she can finish, so Wonder Woman assumes that Donna Troy killed the Fates. Which is really interesting. Frank Miller's doing... Azzarello's on it. We'll see. There's an ad for DK3 I didn't realize. Let's see. We'll see how it goes. Sorry. Really got off track with that part. So then at the end of the issue, this kid who's been stalking Wonder Woman and wants to become the God of War shows up, and she almost beats the shit out of him, but he gets off a lucky shot with an arrow and wounds her. And then her eyes start bleeding, which is fucking creepy as shit. And she's going after him to really take his ass down, and he flees, and then immediately after he flees, she collapses. So, I don't really know where they're going with that yet. That kid's really becoming an interesting character. He's the son of a Titan or Poseidon? Son of Poseidon, I think, and he wants to become the God of War, so I really hope they don't give it to him. I really like the idea of Wonder Woman having to struggle with being the God of War and remaining Wonder Woman. If they do that, I will legitimately be disappointed in the book, because I have felt like a lot of this book has been, in one way or another, getting Wonder Woman back to her status quo through the Azzarello stuff, and I really hope they don't do that. I like this new ground for the character, and I want to see how much farther they can take it, and how they can use it to expand the universe, but also keep parts of the old universe. So I don't want to retcon the new stuff just to get back to the old stuff, because people miss the old stuff. I understand missing the old stuff, but I want to see them keep pushing forward with the character. Ultimately, though, I don't have too much negative to say about the book. I just hope that's not what they do. I hope that she's able to defeat this kid, or maybe, she gives him the power of the God of War and he can't handle it, so she takes it back. Something like that. I really want to see Wonder Woman, deal with something that she hasn't had to before. And that's really interesting to me. Especially with how Azzarello set up what it was to be the God of War, and how Finch worked with it. Meredith Finch worked with it in the beginning of the book. I hope to see them continue on with that. That idea of combat following you wherever you go, no matter where that is. But yeah, we'll see how this goes as it's continuing on. Hera's a little... Just the gods aren't written quite as well as Azzarello had. Like, Azzarello really had a voice, had an idea of what he wanted from these characters, from the Greek gods. And I really got the feeling that he was a fan of Greek myth growing up, or whatever. At least he did a lot of research on it for his run on the book. So, the gods just aren't written quite as sharply. And that's okay. I mean, I'd prefer that, Finch not use them if she doesn't quite have a great voice for him, but, it's whatever. We'll see where it goes. Overall, though, really good book. I'm still really enjoying this book. Yeah, we'll see how this continues on, though. We'll move on to trade talk, and this week we're talking about Sandman again. Oh my god, Sandman. Sandman. I'm going to start a new take, though, just to give myself proper time to talk about Sandman. So, I made the point the last time I talked about Sandman that I thought it was proper literature and it deserved a place in the canon. And I've often talked about being annoyed that, when you say something and you think it's genius and you think that there's no one else who said it better than you or made the same point as you, and then you find out someone not only made the same point, made it better, and of course, on the back inside cover of this book, if this isn't literature, nothing is. Damn it, people, stop it. Let me have all the original ideas. So this is volume 7 of the library collected edition, right? Fully remastered edition. There we go. This is volume 7. of that, and it's really good. This is the Brief Lives story arc, and since there was literally one issue missing between the Absolute collections and where to start on the remastered collections, I had to go read Sandman issue number 40. So that was, kind of annoying. But anyway, that issue is really good on its own, but it is entirely a standalone issue, so I'm not really going to talk about it here because I read it, over a week ago now. This book's just about, the title Brief Lives kind of gives it away in a sense. I'll talk about the plot of it before I talk about the implications, though. So in this, Delirium and Dream, brothers and sisters, are our main characters, and they're going on a quest or a journey to find their brother Destruction, who we're told 300 years ago abandoned his post, and just left his realm to do its own thing. He didn't oversee it, didn't help it at all, and he told his family that he didn't want them to seek him out or anything. And that's really interesting. The idea of Destruction not wanting to destroy anymore, not wanting to be involved in it, and he keeps saying because there's never just one side to a coin. And so, that gets into the thematics of what this book is about, and like I said, the title gives it away, Brief Lives. It's the idea that everything has a brief life. Everything has some kind of mortality. Possibly even death. You have that great issue that I talked about with the Metamorpho Girl in Volume 2 of Absolute Sandman. And Death has that line where she's like, I was there before the first living thing, I was there right before the first living thing, and I'll be there at the end when the last living thing perishes. And then I'll lock the door and walk away. And that's really interesting, but in this we get the sense that they can't be sure that's what's going to happen. The Endless, with the exception of Destiny, don't know all of what the universe will be and such. So Dream doesn't know if any of them are going to live literally forever. Eventually, Eventually, the Endless 2 will die. And that's the point that his brother's making. There's never just one side of a coin. They may fill these mythic roles, these higher-than-life kinds of roles, but eventually, too, their purpose will end. In this, we see gods kind of, scraping by, these long-forgotten gods. We see a goddess who is this temple goddess of love, who's now become a stripper because that's the only way she can get tributes of admiration for her beauty and her sexuality. And we see this other god who, his prayers and his sacrifices were dwindling when he knew Morpheus, so Morpheus suggested to become a patron of travel, because someone will always need to be able to travel. And so he took up that position so he wouldn't fade the way gods do. That's what gods do. They fade. They don't die. They fade away slowly. When people stop talking about them is when they go away. And so in this, we see gods die, we see mortals die, we see, there's this great scene with this guy who's apparently lived for 15,000 years, and he just gets crushed by a building, of all things. He just dies underneath a brick building. And he has this line with Death where he says, okay, let me find it. I'm not even hurt, blah, blah, well, that's one way of putting it, but your body is under there. No, please, no, not after all this time. I mean, a stupid accident? But I did okay, didn't I? I mean, I got, 15,000 years? That's pretty good, isn't it? I lived a pretty long time. And Death tells him, you lived what everybody gets, Bernie. You got a lifetime. No more, no less. You got a lifetime. I really like that. There's a finality to it. It's like everyone gets this. No matter if you're a god or a mortal or anything. Everything is mortal. Everything is finite. Even death, it is possible, is finite, which is weird. This is so fucking meta. And so Morpheus visits a god who is also dwindling, and that they talk on this as well. It's a Egyptian cat goddess, and okay. Her ears prick forward. Someone is praying to her. A young human female whose cat companion was recently hit by a car. The cat is beyond recovery, and Bast, who is the name of the goddess, Bast sends it an easy death. The effort tires her. She remembers when the prayers and offerings swarmed around her at all times, uncountable, when she would pick and choose between them, selecting prayers on merit or on a whim, accepting or rejecting offers. She is beginning to be scared of dreams. Bast is getting old. She was a goddess. She ruled for hundreds or thousands of years in the kingdom of Egypt. She was, this immortal being to be feared and respected and worshipped. And now, occasionally someone might pray to her, and it takes effort to grant them their prayer. That's fascinating. The idea that gods too wear thin. That they don't always stand up to the test of time. And what's so interesting about this is, in a book that's so much about mortality, even for things that we've been told are immortal, even though the book is about those concepts of life and death, death is not really in it. Obviously she is. I just read a scene with her, and she pops up, I think, she pops up one other time in the book, and then we get kind of a fake-out moment with her. Otherwise, I think she might have a brief cameo. She pops up 3 full times, and then we get a brief mention of her. She pops up a number of times in the book, but she's not an important character in this book. She's not actively doing anything, and she doesn't have a lot of talking that she does in this book. She's there, she fulfills her role a couple times, but ultimately the book isn't about her. And that's weird, to have a story about mortality that has very little to do with death. I really like that. Death, the character. I really like that. And so ultimately at the end of this book we get, this is more or less bookend by the character of Orpheus, who we saw, previously in Volume 2 with Lady Joanna Constantine, and, this whole thing with the French Revolution. And so we get this sense of, making your own decisions within your life and letting that be the end of your life and stuff. So Orpheus's head has been basically sitting in this temple in Greece for hundreds of years. It was stolen once during the era of the French Revolution, and they didn't get it back for 30 years, but they got it back, and he's been back that whole time. And Morpheus has been avoiding him. And we find out that, just real quick, let me summarize. The story of Orpheus, for those that don't know it. Orpheus, in Greek mythology, had the most beautiful voice ever. He had a voice that was so beautiful that no matter what you were doing, you had to stop and listen to it, because it was intoxicating. It was thrilling. It was the most beautiful voice ever. And due to a tragedy of his wife, I think, stepped on a snake or something and got bit. It was just a nothing death, if I remember correctly. His wife died and went to the underworld, and Destruction, in this, where we find out Destruction urged Orpheus to go see death, to go seek out death in the underworld, and convince death to give him his wife back. And it doesn't get fully explained in this, which is fine, because part part of what's great about Sandman is it borrows from the canon in the same way that the other canon borrows from itself. And what I mean by that is, you read Dante or a bunch of Greek myth or Bible stuff. It's all referencing itself. It's all very internally connected, and Shakespeare's in there too. He has a lot of references to, the old myths and stuff. And Gaiman's very much borrowing on that same thing. So, in the original story of Orpheus, he goes down to the underworld and he sings his song, or sometimes plays a flute or whatever. He sings down in the underworld to get past all the guards and all the levels and have an audience with Hades. And his singing is so beautiful it even convinces Hades himself to allow Orpheus to leave with his wife, but on one condition. He may leave with her, but she must walk behind him, and he is not allowed to look at her until they are out of the underworld. And Orpheus is very suspicious of this, and so as he's almost out of the underworld, but before he leaves, so he doesn't have to go back just in case he's been tricked, before he leaves, he cannot help but turn to look to make sure that his wife is behind him. And the second he looks, she is snatched away back to the underworld because he'd broken his agreement. And it's shortly after this, because he's so mournful, he's so sad, that Orpheus is torn apart by harpies. I think they call them something else in this. It's probably just another name for them. So he's ripped apart, and his head is thrown into a river that grants it immortality or something. It seems it's hard to tell. And so Morpheus has decided that Orpheus, since his head is alive, that he'll keep him protected because he's his son. But we see this dialogue shortly after Orpheus's wife had died before he went to the underworld. Oh, where's that? Come on. We see this dialogue between them, and Morpheus says, "You should have gone to her funeral. Why? To say goodbye. I have not yet said goodbye to Eurydice, whatever her name is. You should. You are mortal. It is the mortal way. You attend the funeral, you bid the dead farewell, you grieve, then you continue with your life. And at times the fact of her absence will hit you like a blow to the chest, and you will weep, but this will happen less and less as time goes on. She is dead, you are alive, so live." And at the end of the book, or toward the end of the book rather, before this scene even, Morpheus grants Orpheus what he's wanted for thousands of years: death. Morpheus kills his own son at his bequest. He kept him alive, and he hadn't contacted him in thousands of years because he could not bear the idea of his son asking him to kill him. But circumstances of finding his brother required that they go see Orpheus, and Orpheus told him where his brother was, and Morpheus promised to come back, and he did, and his son asked for what he'd always wanted for thousands of years, which is a quick death. So Morpheus, once he gets back to the dreaming, reflects upon this memory of this conversation he had with him, and he says, "So live," and then he's tortured because that he had to kill his own son, and he never really understood the pain that mortals deal with a lot of times. Like in the beginning of this book. So at the beginning of the book, Morpheus had been moping around because, he was left by a woman that he loved, and he'd been making the dreaming rain for 2 weeks straight. And all the servants kind of, talk about how he always takes everything so seriously and gets so mopey and lets himself get wrapped up in it. And then he goes with delirium on this journey as a distraction for himself. And at the end of this, he's ready to go back to work in the dreaming and everything. He's not gonna be all mopey like he was. And his brother has insisted that he has changed over the years. And Morpheus says he'll go back to his work tomorrow, but for the day he's going to just retire into his chambers. And he washes his hands of the blood of his son, and remembers that, and has that line, "At times the fact of her absence will hit you like a blow to the chest, and you will weep, but this will happen less and less as time goes on. She is dead, you are alive, so live. So live." And that's all he has left, is the memory of his son. He gets to just live with that now. And it is this perfect circle of what mortality is, what change is. And that's great. There's another great line in here, too. Once they get on the road, where's it at? Oh, once they get on the road, for a whole chapter, Delirium has been asking if there are words for things that there are not words for. Like these really complex, thoughts that just words don't exist for, and I find that really interesting. And she says, "What's the name of the word for things not being the same always? I'm sure there is one, isn't there? There must be a word for it, the thing that lets you know that time is happening. Is there a word?" And this driver says, "Beats me." And Morpheus says, "Change." She says, "Oh, I was afraid of that." This is about the marching of time, the impermanence of things. Even when something seems like it's going to be there forever, it's not. Everything has an expiration date. Everything dies. Even gods die. And that's fascinating when you think about it. Like I'm sure someone watching this never knew who Orpheus was until I told that story about him a minute ago. I'm sure there's someone here that's watched all the way through the video, even though you haven't read this, and you never knew who Orpheus was, yet, thousands of years ago, people thought about Orpheus constantly. He wasn't a god or anything, but there was the myth of Orpheus. It was this amazing Greek story that had been told for generations, and you didn't know about it. It faded into obscurity in most circles, and I think that really makes the point. That makes the point that gods are not permanent, just as much as mortals are, just as much as bugs are not permanent. And I find that so beautifully fascinating and so well handled, and the idea that gods can feel too. And I'm an atheist, but I really do find something poignant in that these mythic figures that we as people create are, by their very nature of being created by people, impermanent. They seem like they're going to last forever, but they won't. Just like you. Everything has an expiration date. There's also just a little thing in this that I really liked. Delirium's written just absolutely adorably. She's so much fun. She's like this drugged out teenager. And she's such a sweetheart. Neil Gaiman is so good at writing sweethearts in his books. But there's just this one moment in this, and it's not even a character-related thing. It's how something is credited. Like every chapter they open up and they credit who did what, and who the artist is and everything. It's comic books, they always do that. But instead of written by Neil Gaiman, they have just words by Neil Gaiman. Pencils by blah, blah, blah. I thought that was pretty funny. Jill Thompson did pencils and Neil Gaiman did words. That was pretty good. But yeah, really, really great book. Every time I read Sandman, I fall in love with it more and more. If you've never read Sandman and you're a fan of comic books, even if it doesn't really seem like your thing, just give it a shot. I mean, it's not action-driven, but it has some, cool horror elements from time to time. So even if you're not a literary high-minded thing, you don't have to enjoy it just on that level. There is other stuff here that I really do feel makes it worthwhile to read. I immediately gravitate toward the philosophical underpinnings of it and the literary references within it. So I absolutely adore it for that reason. But there is other stuff to be enjoyed. It can just be enjoyed on the surface level of crazy, mysterious things, too. So, if you have any suggestions for trades you'd like me to pick up, or comics, monthly comics coming out you'd like me to pull to talk about on the show, please leave it in the comments down below. But until next time, everyone, I am Sid Part 2. This has been Comic Reviews. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.